So I'm going to be running you through how to handle basic IPR, interproximal reduction. I'm going to be using a stone model here, and unfortunately with the stone I'm going to have to be using water here, otherwise it will actually sort of just powder up on us and you won't be able to see anything. I'm going to be taking you through how to just adjust a normal contact like this, and also how to adjust a slightly crowded contact here. Okay. There's going to be also one molar contact which we'll do, and it will all be using the yellow standard IPR burr. Okay. So one of the first things you want to do when we're opening up, say we're doing a little bit of IPR between the 3.3 and the 3.2, one of the first things you want to realize is that if the IPR is less than 0.25 millimeters, you're not going to be using the burr to do the entire interproximal reduction. You're going to be using the polishing strip, because unfortunately, no matter how fine your hand is with the burr, it will not be enough to create that fine an adjustment, a 0.2 millimeter IPR in between these teeth. You will always cut more because of the size of the burr. Okay. When we're talking about a straight up and down contact, it is quite simple to actually open these contacts up. I usually recommend starting from the papilla here on the model and actually just going with brushing motions like such until you actually open up the contact, and I'll show you what that looks like right now. So you see there now we actually have a open contact, and now it is quite important that you realize that the contact has to be open all the way on both sides. Okay, it has to be completely broken. Sometimes you will find, especially with canines, they have actually quite a deep attachment that almost feels like it's a little bit below the gingiva there. So it's important that you actually break that, otherwise the teeth will still be hitting together but you won't be able to see it, and you'll get collision and they won't move with the aligners. So a little adjustment that I would make here is to always check on the other side of the teeth here, always make sure that your adjustment is even. And there we go, we've got a nice little bit of adjustment there. Now, obviously the stone in the model is going to be a lot softer than actual teeth, so it's going to be even harder for me to control the burr with this stone model. However, with teeth, with the enamel in teeth, it's going to be a lot easier. The burr's not going to have that much cutting force all the way through it, and you'll get a lot more time to really just use that soft brushing motion. I recommend that you don't have more than a couple of seconds in contact with the teeth, with the whole cutting surface of the burr in contact. Otherwise it puts too much stress on the burr and you might get a breakage there. These burrs are fragile, they will break anyway, but we just want to preserve the longevity as much as we can. Okay. So without further ado, we might move on to one of these, say a more crowded contact here. And if you see from the back, we actually see the alignment of the two teeth here. Say we're doing the 3-1 to the 4-1. There is that slight sort of a little bit of crowding there, which creates a different shaped contact to what we were dealing with over here. So usually in a situation like this, or where it is a little bit more extreme, this one requires slightly more finesse to the IPR. In that, rather than we're going to do, if we were just going to go straight up and down like this, you would cut heavily quite into both of these teeth. You wouldn't really be following the contact of the teeth, you'd be establishing your own, which is not what we want. Okay. In this, I find it easy to explain to people that you just sort of trace the contact. So what I mean by that is to angle the burr more towards a tip first approach, not entirely sort of tip first like this, but probably at about a 45 to 60 degree angle, and literally just tracing as if you were sort of painting by numbers, okay, or tracing along, joining the dots. So I'll show you a little bit about what that looks like. I might start from this angle because it's a little bit easier to see. Now you'll notice there that I didn't go all the way through that contact. I just traced the outline, that slight curvature of the one there. I just traced around that so that we got just the general shape of the contact preserved. I'm going to now do the same thing from this side, and you'll notice that the contact will open itself. Okay. And there we go. And as you can see now, the contact is open and both teeth remain completely in their original shape and intact. Okay. Now, once again, obviously the enamel is going to be a little bit harder than the stone pour-up that we have here, but the same principle remains. You're just going to be taking that point of the burr and just tracing along the contact. You won't get any sort of bite sideways and cut the whole tooth in half or anything like that, as long as you're applying a delicate light pressure and actually literally just feeling like you're tracing the contact. What I'm going to show you here, the last thing I'll show you, is a molar contact reduction here. Very, very easy between a sort of a premolar and a molar. The difference being that, once again, much like with the canine, the contact can be quite low, deceptively low, so it's important to actually get all of this contact separated, otherwise we're going to run into a similar problem where the teeth will still have collision, but it will look like they're open. Okay. What I generally do with these ones, because there's a little bit more meat to the contact than there is with some of these front teeth, is same sort of brushing motion that we did with the first one, but I approach it from both sides. So I'll usually do a couple on the front here, and then a couple at the lingual or palatal, and just continue in that fashion, just a gentle brushing. Until we are actually all the way through there. Now, as I mentioned, one really important thing with these contacts here, because they can not only be quite deep but quite broad, is that you make sure that you're getting all the way through. Quite often there'll be almost a tiny, you'll be able to feel it with the burr, a tiny little bit of contact remaining. You just want to make sure that that is all completely separate. Okay? And there you have that little bit of reduction. Now, as a bonus, I am going to run through here how to actually use the polishing strips effectively without taking a whole bunch of time. A polishing strip can be applied without the use of a burr, definitely, but it does take up a little bit more time than if you were to use the burr to just slightly open the contact a little bit first. Not actually break it, but just loosen it up a little bit, reducing the surface area of the contact between the teeth to make the polishing strip easier to use, more pleasant for the patient, and more effective. So, with that in mind, very similar to when we were doing the tracing on the other tooth here, we're going to be doing a very similar process here. Say these two teeth here had an 0.2 millimeter reduction required. What I would usually do is, while I'm not going to break the contact with the burr, because as I mentioned, the burr is unfortunately too big, you can't actually get that finer contact, I'll still just go over this little contact area here, very, very gently, from the front and the back. And once I've done that, you'll see there that the contact is not actually open, but it is greatly sort of reduced in terms of the surface area of the contact still remaining. That is going to be much easier now for you to put a polishing strip through. Obviously I can't do it on a stone model because this is all one homogeneous pour-up, so there is actually no contact in between the teeth for me to exploit. But in a natural teeth, now that you've reduced that contact from being sort of a large surface area like that to only contacting on a little bit, you'll be able to put the polishing strip in the middle there and quite effectively reduce that 0.15, 0.2 millimeter reduction without having to spend all that time really struggling to get the polishing strip in between the teeth. Okay? So that's been a little IPR tutorial for everybody. I hope that helps, and well, if you have any questions, you know how to get to me, so that'll be it from me.